Hi, welcome to our next episode of the CX podcasts. My name's Matt Mullen. I'm Sales Director of Customer Advocacy. I've worked at Gamma and providing and working with customers in terms of managed services for the last 15 years.
Hi, I'm Helen Bowman. I'm the Customer Service Director at Gamma for enterprise and public sector customers. I've been with Gamma about 20 years in a variety of roles, all that time working with customers and in and around customer experience in various different points of the customer journey. And today we are going to be continuing our podcasts with a session on emotional labour. So Matt, would you like to frame for us what does that actually mean? What is emotional labour?
Yeah, of course. So emotional labour is the concept to describe how workers manage their feelings and around a set of rules and guidance that are imposed on them, and particularly in this case, in the setting in terms of business outcomes and expectations, and what drives that.
I think for me, it's something that's particularly important on the support desk, on the service desks. They can be dealing with all sorts of different customer contacts, anything and everything, and having to quickly get to the nub of what the issue is and flick between different moods to mirror what the customer is feeling. And that might not be necessarily the feelings that the agent is feeling at that time. They're just having to mirror that back at the customers. It's exhausting. It's heavy duty stuff. So why do you think it's important in a CX environment?
I think I know we've had this conversation so many times around the office and meeting customers, but good CX isn't a nice to have. It's absolutely fundamental now in terms of how we operate, how we integrate in terms of with our customers, with our partners. But actually, it's also so important in terms of that employee experience and how then that surfaces in terms of outbound, but also in terms of quality of people's lives, in terms of the development, the training and the opportunity it presents as well.
And I think we do, as you know, a lot of work, take a lot of research and insights from companies like Gartner and the Institute of Customer Service, and they're all saying the same thing around, yeah, sure, your hygiene measures are still important. You've got to have KPIs. You've got to make sure that your agents are picking up the contacts and the phones effectively, answering customers effectively, getting things right first time. All that stuff is still important, but actually now it's just expected. It's a given. We've got to do that stuff well. And the focus now is more around, well, how are we providing real value to our customers and getting the most out of those engagements when they speak to us? And that's really difficult, I think, particularly in an industry like ours where we provide solutions, not commodity products. It's really difficult for agents to understand who they're talking to and what they're feeling in that moment, why they're contacting them, what the recent contact history has been, what historical problems are on account, what products they consume, how that all knits together to provide the service that we provide to the customer. Actually, all of that stuff is mentally taxing. And in the moment when they're taking that call from the customer, to have to try and piece all that together for a customer they may never have spoken to before means they're often switching between systems, trying to surface information. So how can we help them with that?
It makes perfect sense. And I think one of the things I wanted to do as well is, and maybe to continue that conversation, is just to say, well, can we think of a couple of examples from our world in terms of where we've had to deal with a situation in terms of emotional labour and how that's turned up?
I think I did in my early days. I was at Gamma, I was an account manager. And in those days, the account managers did absolutely everything. So we did FOLs, we did provisioning, we did billing inquiries, we did upsell, we did everything for the customer. And part of the responsibility was to do out of hours support. And I remember taking a call from a particularly fraught customer one evening in the early hours. And on the face of it, it was just a broadband line that was down. And if you read the script, you're supposed to explain to the customer what the SLAs around the broadband service are. In those days, it was very much a best endeavours thing, no guarantee around when that service would be back up. But you had to quickly get to the nub of why that customer was actually fraught, and the customer was fraught. And yes, it was a broadband line. And yeah, their SLAs weren't the most robust, but actually they weren't upset about the broadband line being down. They were upset because that was attached to vulnerable people's panic buttons in a care home environment. There was a risk to life. And there was a whole, drains up process and review after that particular incident. And we did restore service. And fortunately, no one was put at risk over it. So it was all good. But actually, the ability to work that out quickly and make the decision in the moment that you're going to bin the script on that one. Because telling that particular person that they're out of SLA and that they're going to have to potentially wait 3 days for a fix is probably not the message they want to hear at that point. So you need to gauge why they're upset, play it back to them, make sure they understand that you understand the gravity of the situation, tell them what you're going to do about it, and then you can work through the sort of the technical mechanisms of, okay, this is how we're going to fix it for you. So that's sort of an example that springs to mind, but our support desks will be dealing with this all the time as we've got bigger, and it will be the case for lots of our customers as well. And particularly, I think companies like ours, where we've grown through, just organic growth, but acquisition as well. All those systems, as I said before, the swivel chair in between is really difficult to piece together that picture of the customer when they might be fraught and might not be making much sense. So we can really focus on having the rich contextual value-add conversations with them rather than just trying to piece together what their drugs are.
Makes perfect sense, and a really nice example, I think, to bring it to life in a setting we understand very well. I think the other interesting piece when I've been considering this topic as well is it's a great example in terms of real world impacts, what that means in terms of that threat to life, etc. But the other piece that I think is important is we're all humans. We all have good days and we certainly have bad days. I know I do. And even then, the interactions that we have are never 100% consistent in terms of how we contact people. So we're going to have a good day, we're going to have a bad day. It might be completely unrelated to the specific topic that you're actually looking to discuss or have a conversation with a business about, but something has set you into a bad day. And even being able to identify that is a customer that is potentially frustrated, upset, and using the digital tool sets, but the structure and the people, more importantly, to support that is absolutely fundamental. What I was going to ask on the back of that, though, in terms of, so I think a lot of what we're talking about is understanding where a customer or someone else is coming from, those interactions, which effectively is empathy. So why is it so important? What's your views on it?
It's one of those things, empathy, much like customer service. I think everybody goes, oh yeah, I've got empathy. I do customer service. We do that great. It's an easy thing to say, but actually not everybody can do it. Everybody can do it to a degree, but it's more taxing for some than others. And for some people, it's more natural. And I think picking the right caliber of person for your customer service agent is very, very important. That what we expect of these people now is much broader and much richer than it has been historically. They need to understand whatever your product is and they need to understand that in detail. They need to be able to drive lots of systems and work with data and analyse things very, very quickly. They need to be able to display that empathy when they've understood what customer's requirement is and mirror it back to them. And they need to be technically capable these days as well, particularly if we're looking to, push self-serve and customers are struggling to drive our new customer portal. They've got to be able to talk them through that as well. So we actually expect a lot from customer service agents. And I think one of the main errors we see repeatedly is people giving the role of the customer service agent as an entry level position. And a part of the reason for that is that it's just not seen as a viable career or an attractive career. And that perception is getting worse in the younger generation. So there's a whole piece around here. And again, the Institute of Customer Service do lots of stuff on this around how we professionalise that customer service agent skill set and make that a more attractive career option for people coming through. And there are obviously things we can do around tooling and how we surface information to make it easier for them to do that job. But it's a really undervalued skill set, empathy. Everyone can learn to be better at it. You can send people on courses, but actually it's innate, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. You can either do it or you can't. You can learn to be better at it, but you kind of need to have it inherently. And as I say, it's often overlooked, unfortunately.
Yeah. And to my point earlier, there's going to be multiple different scenarios in terms of, so empathy is such a broad area to say, oh, I'm doing a good job of being empathetic, maybe in the moment, but to train and teach and coach and develop that skill set. I mean, I know how passionate you are about this, Helen, and the work that goes in behind the scenes, but it's not a small task. And I think it's a really interesting.
How do you bring that out in an interview environment as well? You know, when you go through your list of questions that you're going to ask somebody when you recruit them, you know, what do you say? How good are you at empathy? You know, it's a difficult thing to draw out, and you can only really get a feel for it by sitting down and talking with someone.
Yeah, one of the things I've been sort of looking and thinking around as well is then in terms of looking at AI tool sets and what that looks like, and then to come to the point in terms of structure. These are seasoned professionals with lots of experience in terms of customer service agent.
Right.
In terms of kind of looking at sentiment analysis, routing calls, the ability to land people with different agents, what's the benefit in that? Or why do we see that as such an important part of the experience?
It's huge, isn't it? And I think it comes down to there's no shortcuts to this. It's very personalised to your organisation and what your organisation does. And I said before, obviously for Gamma, this is complicated. We deal with business to business, so we're dealing with customers who are quite technically savvy, more technically savvy than we are lots of the time. And they'll be talking to us about problems and issues with their solutions, and they will know how to go to a portal. They will expect to go to a customer portal. But those customers that we deal with will often be facing into consumers, and the consumer challenge is very different. You've got to then consider all types of people, all generations, all skill sets, all levels of digital capability. The choice thing becomes very important. You know, if you're dealing with the elderly or people with disabilities, then they will prefer one channel over another because perhaps they simply can't use another one. If you're dealing with people, in underprivileged areas, they may not have access to the technology to do what you're asking them to do. So that channel choice becomes very important for many of our customers, I think. Whereas for us, perhaps it's a simpler challenge because we know that our customers want to use portals and they're happy to do that. But again, the customer journey thing becomes very important because even for us, where most customers want the portal and low touch, frictionless engagement, they want that for stuff that's easy and transactional, low risk, not at those four points in their customer journey. Yeah. So when they are upset, when they have got the care line, phone line that's down, if they want advice, if they're worried about something they've hit a brick wall on the portal, they're still going to want to phone us or email us or have that face-to-face engagement. So it's about understanding the reasons why customers contact you, what they actually need in that moment, and what the best channel is to drive them towards for that particular point in that journey. And it might not be the same for every customer, and it might not be the same for the same customer at different points in their journey. It's hugely complicated. And as I say, there's no shortcut. You just have to go through that process of mapping your customer journey.
It's a highly complex area. I think for me, one of the most interesting things is it's how do we make sure that we can react and work alongside customers, give them the best experience in the moment that matters. And I think it's what you said, there's no two paths are going to be the same. How do you define that in terms of understand what that looks like? So that's where I believe the tool set in terms of looking at the digital technology then plays into all of the great work in terms of structure, the development, the human aspect of what we're providing and the overlay in it. But fundamentally, it's how do you make sure that at that moment that matters to an individual, that's the experience that they get, because we all remember and we all will talk about those moments that matter, positive and negative, in terms of whether that's, with your family, with your friends, or wherever that may turn up. But if you're frustrated and you leave an interaction with a business or organization more frustrated when you start than when you started, and actually in terms of the empathy, we've delivered the complete opposite of what we're trying to achieve, then I think the implications for that are massive and potentially, it could last decades in terms of, another chance to have a moment that matters.
And you see it with, you mentioned sentiment gathering and scoring on NPS and CSAT and value and effort and all those sorts of things. Getting response on surveys is really challenging. If you're lucky to get a 5% response rate on surveys, customers are fatigued with it. They don't want to do it, understandably. But the point being, those really positive engagements and those really negative engagements become ultra important, because the bit in the middle is silent. Nobody's going to take the effort to fill in a survey or to go to social media and make a comment about an organisation if they've had an experience that has largely met their expectations. They just don't do it. They do it if you've blown them away and they do it if you've really upset them. So you need to get them out of the upset category, push them the other way, and that's how you do it. But I think that the issue with surfacing data for at the right points in time for the customer's journey and sentiment gathering comes into this. You're not going to get that journey right first time. It's about the evolution of it. We think this is what our customer contact journeys look like. These are the points in those journeys we want to measure. How do you tap into that and go, right, well, what questions do we want to ask the customer at these points? How are we aggregating that information? Are we even asking questions? Or are we just analysing the voice and the data as it comes through naturally? So we don't have to keep spamming them with surveys. How do we do that? And then how do we use that data? How does it seed our problem management and our continuous improvement processes so we can just get better at stuff without burdening customers with a constant barrage of questions and engagement? And this is where we start to really use our data sources and not burden the customer. You constantly having to give that insight. But again, it's hugely complicated and you won't get it right first time. It has to keep evolving. You have to have the investment around the continuous improvement of this. It's not a one and done. It constantly changes.
And I'd like to just pick up on that continuous improvement, because if we take us back to the start of this conversation and the definition in terms of what is emotional labour, why that's so important, and one of the things I stated was it's the ask for employees to manage their feelings. So, I mean, that's a complicated subject in itself in terms of, I think it's well understood that contact centre, service response environments generally have a higher turnover staff than other areas. And that continuous development and support is so important, because these are advanced skills that we're asking people to pick up day one.
Yeah, the advanced skills that are often in the roles we consider to be most junior, these people might not necessarily be being compensated the same way that others are, that they might be early in their career and perhaps not as emotionally mature as some of their counterparts either, but we're expecting a huge amount of them, a huge amount, and it's draining, particularly if you're then expected to continue that into shift work and out of hours and it's exhausting.
And I think out of hours, but also it's the if you look at a number of organisations we work with, but also in terms of how we're set up ourselves, it's to support more flexible working, to give people choice, which is brilliant. But on the flip side of that, it also makes it very hard for an individual to separate that work and life balance. We are always on, and I think that's got some huge benefits in terms of what it looks like. But if you're dealing with stressful situations or customers through the day that may, in terms of be frustrated, may be upset, and then, the end of your working day is you shut your laptop and then you're making your tea, cooking a nice dinner, trying to relax, but you can just still see the laptop in the corner of your eye. How do you then step back?
On your phone.
Yeah.
It's absolutely. But I think promisingly, if we're talking about the younger generations coming through into these roles, I think by and large they're much better at setting those boundaries than me, the older generations. So I think the agents that I've spoken to in our environment in Glasgow, the ones that do this stuff really well, are very pragmatic about it. They know it's not personal. Yes, I get shouted at a lot. Yes, customers are often upset at the first point, but if I can leave that customer in a better place than they were when they started, I've done a good job. And I know it's not personal. I know it's because of X, Y, and Z. And that's an example for me of an agent that's got high emotional intelligence and really good empathy skills.
Yeah. And I really like the way that I know across both our teams and broad across the organisation at Gamma, how we're using that data in terms of insights to then feed into personalised coaching development pathways. empowering team leads and managers with this insight to not create a one-size-fits-all response to an inbound inquiry or what that looks like, and pulling out specific individuals and working with some of this skill set, routing some of our inbound touch points to the right people to make sure that moment that matters hits the right person, so we can try and resolve as much first-time fix as we possibly can. So I think that data to me is fascinating, but I think it's more interesting the work that the teams at Gamma do in terms of turning that into customer experience through people.
Yeah, and I mean the beauty of surfacing the data, it comes out in the Epic CX report, is the when we're trying to harness AI, and we do a lot with technology leaders who are obviously very excited about Gen AI and the ability to self-serve and all this stuff, and let's switch it on. Exercise a bit of caution in it. It's see it as a co-pilot. It is never going to replace humans entirely, and particularly in what we do. As we've said before, there are definite points in customer journeys where there's just no substitute for human contact and empathy, and you don't get that, certainly not at the moment, with AI. So it's hugely useful, but I think for me, the starting place with this is supplementing it, using it as a tool to help your human beings, to make them more efficient, rather than simply pushing it out to customers and thinking that we can just use AI to solve all of our frontline customer problems. I think that's a dangerous thing. But if we can use it to surface information that is going to make our people more efficient, to give them all the basic information so they don't have to scrabble around for it, and just present them with that summary, that story so far of this is what's happened in the customer account recently. These are the reasons they might be phoning you. These are the reasons they might be upset. This happened last week. Stuff that particular customer contact may not even be aware of. It may have happened elsewhere in the account, but it gives the agent that really rich view of what's happened to bring this customer to you at this point in time. That enables them then to really listen to the customer and what they're saying, and start to move towards that value add model rather than just focusing on the margin measures.
Well, a lot of what we talked about is more in terms of the internal contact, that reactive element, but also all of this feeds so much into the work in terms of that proactive approach. It's not the only contact that we'll receive. It's then how do we build that into a series of interactions with customers? I think you mentioned it earlier, Helen, in terms of that CSAT element, the NPS, but also just understanding if the customer has had a specific issue or challenge or something that they've wanted to overcome. How do we make sure that doesn't reoccur again? How do we make sure that we're continuing to engage in the things that are important to our customers, to make sure, if we've had a conversation that we don't repeat the conversation 6-12 months down the line.
And I think it's a huge differentiator. We spoke about this at GX this year when we invited the Institute of Customer Service in. CSAT's really low at the moment. A lot of organisations are struggling with this, and across the board in all industries, we don't do it particularly well. So it's a real opportunity to go, well, let's do it well. And as a customer experience, if you've had a less than great interaction with that organisation, but that organisation then proactively follows up on that and proactively emails you, contacted you and said, we know that you had this issue with us recently and we've done X, Y, and Z to fix it. You interested in helping us pilot this new process, whatever it might be, just for them to know that without them having to raise a complaint or an issue, you just know that they've had that. Not many organisations do that. In fact, I can't think of any off the top of my head. So I think that's a real opportunity to leverage data and AI and insight without burdening the customer with it, and just being able to provide that real wow customer experience. You didn't even know you told us there was a problem, but we've heard you anyway.
Yeah. And also, and again, I know it's something you're passionate about, but then leveraging across the organisation in terms of that response, in terms of how we can all pull together in terms of what is the right outcome in those scenarios as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Fantastic. I think one of the things you mentioned, Helen, obviously, is a lot of this feeds through from the work we've done at GX, the Epic CX report. So for those that are listening, please see the link below in terms of the Epic CX report. It's a great read and expands on some of the things that we've been talking about today as well. Thanks for your time today and hope you enjoyed it. Please keep an eye out for the next episode in our CX series. And please also, in terms of download the report into the Epic CX work that we've done, and hopefully you'll find it a fascinating read.